Hello, and welcome to PSYWAR, the weekly podcast of the 8th Psychological Operations Group, Airborne, where we give people an inside look at the Psychological Operations Regiment. Welcome back to PSYWAR. This week we're discussing PSYOP qualifications and the selection process. I'm your host, Master Sergeant Mike Dean. With us today to discuss today's topic is Staff Sergeant Jaime Rodriguez from the Special Operations Recruiting Battalion. Welcome, Sergeant Rodriguez.
Thank you. Excited to do this. Once you brought the idea up and said you were doing it, I was looking forward to being a part of it. So nice being here.
Yeah, no, we appreciate you coming out. It gives us a little bit of perspective from the recruiter side.
Right.
So that way, people that are interested in PSYOP can actually understand what they're kind of stepping towards. That first step is always the recruiter. So if you don't mind, just give us a little bit of background about yourself.
Yeah, so I joined back in 2009 as 11 Bravo infantry. I did that for 7 years. I did a couple of deployments to Afghanistan. I got to do some of the quote-unquote cool guy stuff. Went to sniper school, Australian jungle school. Did my fair share of stuff, but I felt like there was still something missing, right? There was two reasons behind why I joined, but in 2015 I went to selection, and then 2016 I graduated. I did a couple deployments with PSYOP to the European continent, so I went to Romania, Hungary, Slovakia, and then Ukraine as well. And then after my deployment to Ukraine, it was my time to do a broadening assignment. Try to expand your career, further your career, and that's what I'm doing now is recruiting for not only PSYOP, but special operations as a whole.
Okay, nice. So something in common. I was 11 Bravo.
Yeah.
Where were you at before?
I had a few different duty stations. I started out in Germany, 2 SCR, and then I went to Fort Lewis with 2 ID, and then Hawaii with 25th. So I got all the good spots.
I mean, almost. You go to 82nd.
I don't know about that one.
I mean, it's the best division in the Army. It's center of the universe, Fort Bragg, right?
I guess.
No harm, no foul. No, once a brother, always a brother. 11 Bravo. I started there, enjoyed it, and so totally relate. And very similar in the aspect of wanting to try to do something else, something more beyond the typical soldier MOS.
Yeah.
So
I mean, there's a couple different reasons. In 2015, when I was thinking about doing something different, it was around the time when a lot of the deployments were winding down. A lot of the units weren't deploying anymore.
Right.
So that was a realization for me was, am I going to get to deploy again? Or is it just going to be constant training for what?
Right.
And then secondly, what is being 11 Bravo going to do for me outside the Army? There's a few different jobs you can do. You can do contract type stuff, or, you can find a career. But that being said, I wanted something that was going to truly expand my skills and give me something to offer outside of the Army. Because one day everyone's going to have to take off the uniform. So
Right,
yeah.
And just playing the long game, so to speak. No, it makes sense, and I think a lot of soldiers don't understand that. I had a lot of friends that got out and came back in, thinking that it was going to be all sunshine and rainbows, and it was a hard time finding a job, and they thought, okay, well, in the military, I know I have a job, I know I'm going to be able to do something more than just hang out, at the gate or whatever security job or contract work, and so it makes sense. It made sense to me. That's why I'm still here today.
Yeah.
So you mentioned now you're a broadening assignment. You're with Special Operations Recruiting Battalion or SORB. What do you do now? What is your role there?
So I started out in the SORB as just a PSYOP recruiter at the Fort Bragg station. I got there in August. That kind of entails, doing your weekly brief, so people coming in and you give them, what is a PSYOP? This is what PSYOP can do for you, how it can help your career, help your family, things like that. Process packets to get them off to selection, just assisting those soldiers from going wherever they are in the Army now to selection. And that also entailed, going to some of the smaller locations on the East Coast, like Fort Belvoir, a lot of those smaller ones up in the D.C. area.
Okay.
And then in that time, I had started the Fort Bragg social media, Fort Bragg SORB social media. That caught some traction and caught some attention, and with that, the battalion decided that they wanted to use me as the battalion social media manager. So now I'm doing the same thing, still doing briefs, still assisting soldiers in putting their packets together. But with that, I'm also running all of the Go Army Soft social media stuff. And so that this kind of just hits on the skill set that PSYOP can really bring is at the end of the day, we message people, right? And so if I can't do that effectively, then am I really a effective PSYOPer? And so I kind of take that skill set that I learned through the Q course and kind of apply it to what I'm doing now, and not only recruiting, but for the social media stuff. And similar to what you're doing now, right? You're doing messaging on a different platforms and stuff and whatnot. So you're using your skill set to kind of run all that similar stuff that I'm doing. You're doing this is the same thing for your organization, so 8th group.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, it makes sense. And you hear it a lot more so now, the cyber realm and being able to message appropriately in that world. And so you see a lot of PSYOPers that are now kind of turning their focus to, social media, other cyber type things, so that just to be able to broaden our scope, because you hear a lot of people talk about the old days, leaflets and loudspeakers, still relevant depending on where you're at.
Exactly.
But the here and now, and when you start talking about near peer type threats, well, we have to understand the cyber environment. So it makes sense.
I mean, you break it down to a small scale, what we're going through now with the global pandemic or whatever you want to call it. Two months ago, we couldn't even leave our house, right? But we were still conducting recruiting operations because of our capabilities. You were still pushing out information through social media. I was still recruiting through social media, through online platforms. So using our skill set and still being able to conduct our operations without even leaving our house. So it says a lot about what we can really do.
And so reaching out, this kind of brings me into my next topic or question. You're out there putting, hey, SWORD, we're a thing. Who are you trying to talk to? What kind of soldiers are you trying to bring into our soft PSYOP?
Right. So just like for every reason that somebody has for joining the Army, there's a different reason for somebody wanting to go soft. Some may be negative in nature, some may be positive in nature. For me, I wanted to do something more. For somebody else, it might be, hey, I want to get out of specific unit so I can truly do something else. So first and foremost, we're just looking for soldiers to do something bigger. And then secondly, I want to add the fact that we don't select people. A lot of people have this preconceived notion that the SWORD does some sort of like pre-selection or kind of weeds people out. We do none of that. If you want to go soft, we'll take you and we'll submit your packet and we'll let selection do that selection process. So if you want to do something more, something bigger, and expand your career, that already says something about you that 90% of the rest of the Army isn't willing to do. So we will put your packet in and we'll get you off to selection.
I think that's important because sometimes people are afraid to even come talk to you guys because they self-select.
Exactly.
Well, they're not even gonna talk to me because of whatever reason.
Right.
And they're kind of selling themselves short right out of the gate. And that's unfortunate because I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that could benefit. It's a two-way street. The Army's going to benefit, but at the same time, you're going to benefit by gaining a new skill set and then giving back in a different capacity to the military and really the country at large. Are there any types of attributes that you think from the people that you've seen or talked to that kind of stand out?
I mean, there are some individuals come to the office and you kind of get this feeling like, okay, he'll make it, or he's got a good chance. And typically it's those people that have good communication skills. Some of the people that come in might be kind of shy, kind of reserved, unsure if they really want to do it or if they're capable of doing it. Not to say they won't, but those people that kind of exude confidence, are able to speak publicly, have a conversation. Those are the people that kind of really stand out when they come into the office. Because as you know, it's a big part of the job is being able to speak and hold a conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
Communication through and through. I saw it. So I was an instructor at the schoolhouse, and you would see it a lot. Those guys that made it through selection, but then when they got to the schoolhouse, a little bit more reserved. I won't say totally an introvert, but having a conversation was difficult. And I think we're in a generation where people are used to social media.
Yeah.
It's easy to send a message and walk away.
Yep.
You hear the term keyboard warrior and things like that thrown out all the time. And so it becomes a different dynamic when you're sitting and talking with somebody, or now I have to probe to understand who you are as a person or a community, and now I'm uncomfortable because I'm outside of your normal. And you don't know how that's going to play out.
Yeah.
And I'll say some of today's generation, that makes them uncomfortable.
But I think it's important to also note that those kinds of things can be learned, and it can be you can practice them. If you would have come to me 5 years ago when I was still at the end of my 11 Bravo career, despite being a team leader and having some sort of confidence, I hated public speaking and I hated talking to people. I was not good at it. Even after selection, it was one of the things I felt like I was weakest at. But through the Q course, it's things that they teach you through practice, through all your training, all your Cert X's, even your deployments, your constant repetition of that sort of thing. Not to say I'm great at it and I still don't particularly enjoy it.
Right.
I've gotten better at it, I think.
No, I agree. The irony is if you ask, and this is a totally random number, but if you ask a large percentage, I'd say probably more than 50% of PSYOPers probably have some kind of a fear of public engagement. I'm exactly the same.
Yeah.
And it's just something that I've gotten better at over the years from the training, the repetition. You don't ever think that you're going to find yourself talking with a high-level individual,
right,
like an ambassador or general, and you have to. You're going to be in that position. So it's kind of one of those things that you have to prepare for. So that training and that repetition becomes key. I'm the same. I don't like public speaking at all, but it just happens. And so moving on, so we find those individuals, they walk into your office. What does a qualified soldier look like in terms of just generic qualifications, officers, enlisted alike?
So I tell people there's kind of like two different sides of this. So first is kind of like do I meet the minimum qualification portion of it? So that being across the board enlisted officer, minimum qualifications are the same. They stay the same. So 105 GT, 210 PT score, and then when you need to take it, a 75 D-Lab score. And those are, the three bullets that do you meet those three things? That being said, they are waiverable on a case-by-case basis. So you brought it up earlier, don't self-select. If you have a 104 GT and you think you're capable and you're able to explain why you deserve a waiver and deserve a shot at selection, we'll submit the packet for you. Like I said, we will put in the work for you to get to selection. We don't select people. We'll help you get to selection.
That's good. So you mentioned the PT score. Is that the current standard Army Physical Fitness Test, the APFT, or is that the Army Combat Fitness Test, ACFT?
So it's the APFT. As long as whatever the physical fitness test of record is for the Army as a whole, that's what will be used for your selection packet and then at selection as well. As soon as, if it ever does switch to the ACFT, the proper changes will be made for that to be the PT test for selection as well. But whatever the record PT test is for the Army, that's what we use.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's good for them to know. So those are the baseline requirements.
Right.
Now, is this where it deviates between officer and enlisted?
A little bit. So now we go into kind of like the packet. What do I need to get to selection? So the basic requirements being a CRC physical, good within the last 2 years, an ERB, good for 6 months, and then a PT card, good for 6 months. Those are the three documents that are basic across the board. And then on an individual case-by-case basis, like we mentioned, waivers. So if you've gone to selection before and for whatever reason didn't make it and you're trying to return early, there's a waiver for that. There's physical waivers if you have some sort of medication that you need to take, anything like that. So we'll do the background on you, kind of ask you the certain questions to see if you need a waiver. If you need a waiver, we'll get those documents for you. And then as far as enlisted and officer, the difference there being is that officer needs a narrative. So kind of explaining, their background, who they are, what they've done in the military, and then why they want to go SOF, specifically why they want to go PSYOP. So it's kind of a one-page write-up of why they want to do that. Now, the narrative kind of changes between being a requirement and not. At the current moment, it's not, but I think it's a good idea to have already written up just in case it is something that comes back as part of the packet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, are there any specified ranks that can apply, or are there any that are excluded?
Yeah, so that I did forget to mention that portion. For the enlisted side of it, it is E1 through E5 non-promotable. So just regular E5. And then if you're E1 and E2, you do need a waiver. It's like a pre-approved blanket waiver because of the 37X program that we can kind of explain later. It allows people who just got into the Army to get to selection as well. So E1 through E5 non-promotables. And then on the officer side, it's by year group. So right now we're accepting, we're in FY20, so accepting FY17 and 18. And then as the year groups move on, the next year group will open up. Typically it's 2 year groups back that's eligible. And then 16 and 15 are eligible with the waiver as well. But the primary are 17 and 18.
Okay, so anybody that's a little bit senior in their career on the officer side can still apply with a potential waiver.
Right.
So, again, just beating that horse of don't self-select.
Exactly.
If it's something you're interested in, come talk to a recruiter.
Yep.
You kind of mentioned the 37X or 37, sometimes it's called off-the-street program. What is that something that you guys are involved with?
We are not, but we do get questions on it because we do recruit for PSYOP. But unfortunately, we don't have a way of getting those sort of contracts because we don't deal with non-prior service recruiting, on-the-street recruiting. But the program essentially entails you being able to go to your local recruiter, your local recruiting station, and doing the normal enlistment process, but asking for a 37 Fox contract. What that looks like is you go through military police OSIT training, so basic and AIT kind of combined, and then after that you go out to airborne school. From airborne school, you come to Fort Bragg. You'll do the PSYOP prep course, and then you go to the selection. The key thing to mention about the 37 Fox program, similar to the 18 X-ray program, is that it's not a guarantee to be part of PSYOP. It's just an expedited process for you to get to selection. And then once you get to selection, you're in the same boat as everybody else that's there.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good for them to know. And so I've had some questions on this one. Aside, because we work with all our sister services, it comes up in topic, and I've even had phone calls of late. That, hey, how do I got my cousin or my brother that's in the Air Force or the Marines. They want to go PSYOP. How do they do that? I've known people that have been prior service, other services that are in our regiment. Is that something that you guys deal with at the SORB?
We get a lot of questions on it right now. There isn't specifically a process for sister services to come straight over from their current branch to selection and then come over to PSYOP. It's a pretty complicated process because now you're involving different branches. It's not as simple as a conditional release. You're getting other branches and other authorities involved there. So it's not a process we can do with PSYOP. What we do, if somebody is interested, and I've gotten a lot of questions on and kind of had conversations about with individuals, is a lot of them are towards the end of their enlistment for that particular branch. So let's take a Marine. He's at the last maybe year and a half of his career in the Marines, and he's kind of contemplating getting out, or he's like, I don't necessarily want to get out. I want to try to go PSYOP. Mm-hmm. From there, he kind of has to get out to be able to go PSYOP. He gets out and then kind of goes through that enlistment process to go through into the Army to go PSYOP. So he can possibly use that 37 Fox if he qualifies, that 37 Fox off the street program. Okay. To come in, and you can kind of speak on it too. But there are certain circumstances for sister services to partake in the qualification course. You being an instructor, you kind of had experience with that.
Right. So we had a lot of Marines that came through our qual course, even some that instructed at the qual course after their time as a kind of a PSYOP Marine or a MISO Marine, as they're called in the Marine Corps. Since they came through our course, they met all the same requirements as you or I going through the course, and I know I think we have maybe a handful that are currently in the regiment that made the jump from Marines over to the Army, but they had been trained by us, and their packets were essentially evaluated by a proponent. I believe that they once they pushed that packet through proponent, that they then had to go through the regular recruiting process, as you mentioned before, like off the street going talking into a regular recruiter. So I don't think they ever specifically went through the SORB, but it is possible. I know it's possible. I've seen it. So it's kind of neat too to see him come over. I know there's one guy. He was actually a student, became an instructor, went back to the Marines, and then got out of the Marines and came to the Army. So we've got this guy that's got kind of PSYOP experience in two different branches. So it's kind of a neat experience to have in the regiment.
Right.
Brings a lot, and I would encourage any service, if you're interested, go talk to a recruiter, whether it's a SORB recruiter or a regular recruiter, just because, back to the don't self-select.
Yeah.
If you meet the qualifications, we'll find a way to work with you.
Yeah, and it really speaks to the job itself as well, being able to work with sister services. And not only sister service, because when I was through the course, we had an officer from Jordan. I think there was like 5 Marines, and there was another foreign, I think it was a couple Italian officers. And so it kind of really speaks to the job as far as when you're not just working with PSYOP, and you're not working with just SOF. You're working with other branches. You're working with other nations. You're working with civilians. Right. So from the moment you get into the course, you really start to see what you're in for once you get to the regiment, which is really cool. Yeah,
no, it's a difficult thing to understand when you walk into it. It can be a little bit intimidating, but at the end of the day, it's really fun. It's rewarding, especially when you run into people like downrange you went through the course with, whether it's another branch or another ally. So it's a really neat thing to be a part of. So they come to you, SORB recruiter, and they want to do a package. What does that process look like?
So they got to find their SORB office. Our website, goarmysoft.com, has the location for our major SORB offices. Those are typically located at like your bigger installations like JBLM, Fort Hood, Fort Bragg, Carson, Campbell. The big locations. And then some of the smaller locations might have like a one-person office, or like in the DC area, there's one office that does them for all those little bases up there.
Okay.
And so that's the first step, is kind of finding your office. GoArmySoft.com is like the easiest resource.
Right.
And then so you come into the office. Every station kind of has like a little checklist of what you need for your packet. So like we talked about earlier, the physical, ERB, PT card, and then like any waivers you might need. And then once you're able to get all that stuff together, the CRC physical kind of is the longest part, just because you gotta make appointments, and you kind of gotta wait for when your packet finishes up with the doctor and stuff like that. Usually we tell people like a couple weeks, but once you get all that stuff together, that's kind of the end of the road for what you need to do really. The rest is on us. We put it all together, make sure everything is checked the way it's supposed to be checked, and then send it up, and then you get classed. Usually it takes we tell people a couple weeks, sometimes it's a little faster, but we tell people a couple weeks, and then you're classed. We'll let you know, hey, you're classed for this date, because when you come in, you let us know, I want to go for the June class, or I want to go to the May class, or hey, I want to go, but I want to go in a couple months so I can get a little more ready. And so whatever date you let us know, we'll class you for that date, and then we'll let you know, hey, you're officially classed. And then from there, you just kind of wait until it's time to get to selection.
So you mentioned, some places only have one or two recruiters there. So if I walk into a station and, hey, I want to join PSYOP, where's a PSYOP recruiter? And they look back at you and they say, well, there's no PSYOP recruiter here. does that mean it's the end of the road?
No, absolutely not. Like I mentioned, up in DC, there's one recruiter, and he's an SF guy. Obviously, he knows enough about PSYOP to give you the basic information. But if you're really wanting to get some specific questions answered, or you just want that first person experience, like, hey, this guy's actually PSYOP, he knows what he's talking about, type thing. One, again, go armysoft.com, and it has a list of PSYOP recruiters per station, so you can just find like a PSYOP recruiter. Two, you let that recruiter know at that station, and then he'll put you in contact with the PSYOP recruiter. So if you're in the DC area and you go up there and you want to go PSYOP and you have more questions that he can't answer, or you want different answers, or different point of view, right, then he'll give you my contact information, or Sarah McCullough, this other PSYOP recruiter here, and then we'll give you a call, or you can reach out directly to us. So that's kind of how it works.
Okay, so they're not stuck.
Right.
They have resources to get more, like you mentioned, first-person perspective.
Yeah, and sometimes your station does have a PSYOP recruiter, but at the end of the day, we're all in the Army. We all have tasks and jobs to do, and he just might not be there, or he might be at a specific course or something. When I was in Hawaii, that's where I went to selection from, was Hawaii.
Okay.
Initially, I was working with a PSYOP recruiter, but after doing my CRC physical, I went back to go turn in all my stuff, and he was busy doing other stuff. He wasn't there anymore for the time being. So then I was working with the CA recruiter, and he was finishing my stuff up. So anybody in the SORB office is there to help you, no matter what mission you're in. If you specifically go there for SF, and I will help you. I'm not an SF guy, but
right,
I understand that taking that first step can be scary.
Right.
And so if you're willing to step into our office, or willing to give us a phone call, or willing to look into a career in SOF, I'm all about helping you, no matter what career that is. I'm a little biased towards PSYOP, obviously.
Of course.
But at the end of the day, make that step, and we're there to help you.
So they shouldn't let that be a turnoff. They can ask for more information, and they get directed to
Absolutely.
somebody that can help. That's good. That's good for them. So you get a soldier that's, I don't know, back from deployment. I'm not a big what if game, but I know it comes up for you guys a lot. Whether it's I want to take leave, or I want to go somewhere, or I just came back from deployment, or I'm about to deploy. Like, how does that impact the packet process and getting ready for selection?
Everything truly is like on a case-by-case basis, whether that's waivers, what class you go to, where you are, even with this, whatever's the current situation, where you are has even impacted, selection in a way, like what duty station you're at. And so it really comes down to communicating with your recruiter, and just being open and honest with them. Like, hey, I'm not sure my unit. I mean, I get it all the time, especially here at Bragg. Bragg with the whatever was going on in January timeframe.
Oh, right, where they pushed out the
they had
unit.
the rapid deployment, and like a whole brigade went, right.
Yep.
And so we had a whole bunch of those guys, and then there was some guys slated like on the fence, like we might go with them. And so a lot of them came to us, and it's good just to have open communication with your recruiter and being like, hey, I don't know if I'm deploying. I might. They said that we if we're leaving next week, and we just tell them, just talk to us, just let us know. It's not that big a deal. We can take your packet. It's already complete. You did the hard part. So now if you deploy, you go do your 6-9 month deployment. You come back, your packet's still good. You might just have to update your ERB or something, and then we'll put you in for the next class. If you don't deploy, your packet's still done, you're still classed, it's not that big a deal.
Okay.
So the biggest piece is just talking to your recruiter and let them know what's going on, because we can always work those little things out.
Okay, so how long is that packet good for?
So the packet is good as long as the documents in it are good. So as long as your ERB is still current, 6 months, your PT is still current, and then the physical, as long as it's all current, I mean, it's still, technically, it's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you kind of mentioned where we're at right now in the world, the pandemic, right? COVID-19, coronavirus. What impact has that had on selection?
It's impacted selection significantly. Not only whether we're conducting selection, but the selection, it's not the selection itself, but like the process. So at the height of the pandemic or the situation, we did have to cancel some classes. I believe it was the April and May class. No, May ran. We're in May now.
Correct.
So we ran May. March and April were canceled.
Got it.
And that was kind of like the beginning of the crisis, and everything was really shut down. Like, we couldn't even leave our house type thing. And so we canceled March and we canceled April. The number one priority for everyone in this whole process is the safety of the candidates, the safety of the cadre, everyone involved. Right. And so the best decision was to cancel those selections. That being said, those individuals, they still got to go to selection. We ran the May class. They did the work. They did the packet. They put in what they needed to do. So we still got them to selection. It was a couple months later, but they still got to go to selection. So they went to the May class. That process was kind of, to get them to the May class was a real show on how dedicated the SORB and USOC as a whole, SWIC, everybody involved, how dedicated they are to getting these individuals the opportunity to get into SOF. With the travel ban and stuff like that, it took a lot of
that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
How I mean, I can't go anywhere.
Yeah,
I'm stuck on
yeah,
Fort
we
Bragg.
can't be like 30 miles or something like that.
So how are you pulling guys to Fort Bragg?
It goes back to the dedication involved by USOC, SWIC, SORB, everyone involved. It takes the exception memos to be signed off by commanders and whatnot. But at the end of the day, what happened was we had specific planes go out to the duty locations of those soldiers, screen them, but
do the medical screening.
Screen them,
right.
Make sure you ask the proper questions. Have you seen anybody? Have you been in contact?
Right.
XYZ, all the common questions they're asking now. Take temperature checks. If they're cleared, they get on the bird and they go to the next stop. So I don't know the exact flight path that was taken or whatnot, but right. Say we go over to JBLM, pick up the 5 soldiers there, go over to Carson, you pick up the 3 soldiers there, go down to Hood, pick up 1 soldier, all screening them, and then finally we get to Fort Bragg, and we screen them again to make sure did anything happen in the past 24, 48 hours type thing, and then we housed them, and then we got them to selection. So the whole time, properly screening them, doing the whole proper distancing, proper procedures to make sure everybody's safe. And then from there, we take them to selection and, ran a successful selection, and hopefully they got selected through that whole process.
And then is that going to happen in reverse? We're going to put them back on the aircraft and send them home?
Correct, yeah. So that whole process in reverse, get them back safely. And then June class, the next class is still scheduled to run. I don't know the exact procedures, if it's going to be the exact same thing. With everything kind of winding down, we're starting to wind down if certain techniques or mitigation things are going to be adjusted or whatnot. But as of right now, June is still scheduled to run. How that's going to happen, we'll have to see. But
so for the foreseeable future, this is going to be kind of the way we get people to selection
right.
and home.
Mm-hmm.
Should anybody expect a typical, what's the typical time frame before COVID, and then what's a service member to expect with this new the way of traveling to get to selection?
So typical time frame as far as what is concerned?
Hey, your selection date is June. Not thinking about COVID the way it was 6 months ago. I leave on X day and I get back after however many days. How many days can a service member expect to be gone? Yeah,
so you typically gone that 10 days for selection, and then maybe 1, maybe 2 days, depending on your unit and how they do your DTS and whatnot.
Travel, okay.
But typically you do fly. We'll use Fort Carson for example. So you fly out of Fort Carson day 0. So you fly out, show up to Fort Bragg, and then you report to Bank Hall. That day you report is day 0. You're gonna get on a bus. You're gonna get down to McCall. You're gonna do all the in-processing type stuff, and you're gonna start selection. And then typically you do your 10 days at selection. And then after that, you might fly out that same evening, or you might fly out the next morning. It just kind of depends on your unit, how they set up your travel and your DTS and whatnot. But you can be expected to be gone 10 days for selection, and then no more than 12 days for the front and back end. But typically you're leaving that next day. So usually 10, 11 days.
Okay. So is there a difference with the way travel is being done now?
Yeah. So now with the previous class, like we mentioned, we picked all these guys up and then we brought them here early to quarantine before selection. And then they quarantined at predetermined location in barracks, and then we sent them off to selection. And then they did the whole process normally and then in reverse. So
Okay. So how long is that quarantine?
14 days.
So basically doubling their time at Fort Bragg.
Right.
Okay. So that's good for them to know, especially those that have families.
Mm-hmm.
We expect to have their service member gone for a little bit longer than the typical.
Right.
So all things considered, I hear the question a lot. I've had it asked a lot. How's someone get ready to go to PSYOP selection?
This is a common question and a question that I can't particularly answer for everybody. You might be in better shape than me. You might be an extremely good runner where I'm an extremely good weightlifter. Obviously, that's not the case because I'm way faster than you, right?
Sure.
but it depends on the person. And I hate giving that answer because it always seems like a throwaway, like basic type answer. But like almost like the entire, if you've seen like a theme throughout this whole thing, it's like a case by case basis.
Right.
Whether it's a packet, whether it's the waivers,
Right.
your duty location, depending on if it has like a big SORB office or a little SORB office, it really is an individualized process.
So what you're saying is it's not a cookie cutter answer on how to get ready.
Exactly. There is no cookie cutter answer because selection isn't cookie cutter. It's a unique process, the selection is. And so we can't give you, there's a reason certain individuals are selected, and we can't give you a sheet of paper and say, follow steps 1 through 3 and you'll get selected, because it's not that simple. And it's not that simple to say, and for the same reason, it's not that simple to say, how do you get ready for selection? It takes a lot of self-insight and self-reflection during the selection process as much as it does beforehand. So am I a fast runner? You have to be honest with yourself. Am I a fast runner? Not really. So maybe I should do a little more running. Can I, ruck 12 miles with a 50-pound rucksack?
Right.
I can, but I'm not very good at it. Well, then you should probably ruck some more with 60 pounds. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so with that being said, there are PT plans that we offer on the GoArmySoft website. So if you go through GoArmySoft.com and you click like the little bars on the side, and the little drop-down menu, there's like a document section. 1, it has all the documents needed for a packet. And then 2, there's an 8-week PT plan and then a 4-week PT plan for both SF and PSYOP and CA. And you can use, whatever one that you think will help you best. If you want to do the SF one, think that's going to get you more physically fit for PSYOP selection, go for it. But there are specific PT plans for each mission set on there that you can use as a guide.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm physically fit. I follow the plan. I'm good to go, right? I'm going to get selected.
Probably not. No, maybe. There are some studs that might get selected, but it's more than just being physically fit. It's more than just running 5 miles at under 40-minute pace or whatever the Ranger standard is, or the 12-mile ruck under 15 minutes. It's more than just that, because when you're running and you're rucking, you're not just running and rucking. There's more to it than that that we obviously can't talk about.
Right.
But, we've talked about it earlier, and it has a lot to do with your personality, your communication skills. Selection is designed to test your mental capacity under physical duress.
Right.
That's like the technical term for it. So what can you handle when you're being physically beaten down? Not beaten down, but like being physically
a high
drained.
level of stress.
Yeah. And what are you capable of? You can speak on it being in SWIC and kind of seeing those key traits that people hold that kind of get them a little bit further. But being physically fit isn't all of it.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's so some of the things I've seen over the years are just the adaptable mindset. RMOS, PSYOP as a whole is a very unique career field where you find yourself in a lot of ambiguous situations. And the nice part about being in SOF and really in PSYOP is the opportunity to and I hate this saying because it's cliche, but to think outside the box. I can look at an ambiguous problem set and come together either myself or with my team and come up with the craziest wazoo idea and look at each other and go, hey, this really sounds crazy. Is this what we're going to do? And we do it, and it solves the problem.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I think kind of encapsulates selection.
Yeah, exactly. There's certain events within selection that'll require you to think that way. There is no right or wrong answer,
Right.
But you need to complete some sort of task, and it's not going to be as simple as take this cup and place it over here.
Right.
It's going to be much more complicated than that, where it requires you to think out of the box and, like you said, wazoo ideas. But if you can get it from the cup from here to there while doing X, Y, and Z,
Right.
then you have a good shot of getting selected.
Yeah.
To further that, I'm a pretty small guy. I'm not the most physically fit stud out there. I'm okay, but I tell people you should be well-rounded.
Yeah.
I finished probably third-ish in every single ruck out of my group. I finished like second or third in every single run, but I was consistent.
Right.
And then I was well-rounded in the speaking and all that other tasks. There was a guy that finished first in every single ruck and first in every single run. He didn't get selected because he didn't hold those other traits.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's not just the physical piece. People got to think about that.
No, that's good. That's good. So understanding we're communicators.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question posed to me a few weeks back. How do I get better at communicating? I think we talked about it a little bit earlier. Are there any resources that you've utilized that soldiers could maybe tap into to better their communication skills?
Yeah.
Because they may see something that's going to test that at selection.
Yeah. Number one is practice. We talked about it earlier. You're not going to get better at anything, whether it's talking, whether it's lifting, whether it's running, playing video games, whatever it is. You're not going to get better at anything unless you practice. So that's first and foremost is practice.
Got it.
But it sounds boring, but at the same time, if this is the profession that you want, it's something that you're going to have to get used to, and you're going to have to you're just going to have to do is study and watch videos or find resources. So watching videos on we told some of our candidates watching YouTube videos on public speaking, like tips on public speaking, or watching debates, holding a conversation,
Right.
going back and forth, and a healthy debate, not arguing, but
Right.
debating. And so it sounds kind of boring, but at the same time, that's going to be your job, and you're going to have to, that's something you're going to get used to, is doing the background or doing the prep work for what you're going to have to do in the future. And so for my last deployment to Ukraine, we had to do briefs to our first sergeant, company commander, and then our battalion commander, and then the group commander.
Right.
You had to brief these people because those are little compared to what we had to do. I had to go in there with our OIC, and we had to brief the ambassador of Ukraine. And so practicing briefing those other people just got us ready for practicing briefing the ambassador.
Right.
So it's not fun. Like I said, I'm not particularly fond of briefing and speaking, but you get better at it, and it requires practice. At the end of the day, it's practice.
Right. So any resources to do that communication platform. Now, we've talked a lot about speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the only thing they should worry about?
I mean, no, there's, academic writing, understanding the English language. There are some, writing tasks within selection that require you to, not require you, but it would be better fit for you to understand,
Right.
the English language structure. Being out of school, I graduated in like 2004. And I went to election in 2015. That's like 11 years. I didn't remember what a pronoun and an adjective and all that kind of stuff was. And so just kind of going back and studying those kind of things helped me during selection as far as kind of the writing tasks that we had to do there. And then not only that, you have to take the D-Lab after selection. And the D-Lab is based off the English language to determine how well you're able to learn a new language.
Right.
Being a great leader is more dependent on what your subordinates say about your leadership rather than what you say about your leadership. That being said, being a good leader also requires you to be somewhat of a follower, or at least a listener, right? Yep. And so, with that being said, teamwork is a big part of selection, big key. Because, you talk on some of the deployments you went on, it might have been maybe just you, but some of the times, you have you and one other person, or it's when I was in Ukraine, it was a 5-man team. Yep. And so very small teams. And with that, it requires you to lean on those other people. You're required to do a job that typically maybe a squad or a platoon would do. You're doing with 5 people.
Right.
And so it requires you to have good teamwork skill, like good, being able to work in a small team, being able to work on a team together. Not only leading them, but also taking guidance and working with them. One deployment you might be just the PSYOP sergeant on the team, and you're not just a PSYOP sergeant. You still have a lot of responsibility. But the next deployment, you might be an NCOIC, and that's what happened to me. I was 6 months out of the course. I was deploying to Romania, Hungary, and Slovakia, and I was the PSYOP sergeant on the team. And then I got back. I was immediately placed as NCOIC of the Ukraine team, and so I took what I learned as a PSYOP sergeant and applied it to being the NCOIC, and in being able to mold that team is one, and not just being the leader of the team. You know what I mean? Sure.
And I think even more so, because I've actually experienced it, being put into a mission set by yourself. You get on the ground and you're the only PSYOP representation that's in that country, working directly with the country team, briefing the ambassador, and I'll never forget. Like I got stopped in the hallway by the ambassador a week on the ground. It's a small embassy in South America, and in small embassies, the ambassador knows pretty much everybody because it's small, and they always see each other. They always work together. It's a small close-knit community, and when there's somebody new on the ground, they know. And he stopped me in my tracks. At the time, I was a fairly young staff sergeant, and stopped me in my tracks and said, "Who are you, and why are you in my building?" And I knew who he was, just because you have to know who's in charge.
I hope you know who he was.
Otherwise, it probably would have been a different reaction. I may not have this story to tell, but explained who I was, what I was doing there, and he had worked with PSYOP in the past, and got really excited, and ended up allowing for a good relationship, but you don't ever think you can really be prepared for that. It goes back to the speaking and engaging and being ready to communicate, but also being able to be not just a follower or a leader, but being able to bridge the gap between the two. And I think all of those things and everything else we've talked about kind of really encompasses the selection process. So, you go through selection. Now you come back. You graduate. Congratulations, you're selected. You walk away with orders in hand to Fort Bragg to SWIC.
Sure. Again, sure. Again, individualized answer, because me and you were selected. Maybe you went to BLC and I didn't. Now you're going to the Q course before I do because I got to go to BLC. Or maybe I'm airborne and you're not. So I'm going to go to the Q course in August where you're going to airborne school in August. Okay. So it really depends on where you're at in your career, what you have done to kind of get to the Q course. Right. So with that, if you have, you're selected, we'll go from ground zero. So you're an E3, been in the Army maybe a couple years, haven't done too much. You're infantry guy at in a mechanized unit, so you're not airborne. So you get selected. Now you go back to your duty station. That's a big thing. A lot of people think you're going to go to Fort Bragg and that's Fort Bragg is your home. No, you go to selection. You come back home. From there, you still have to fulfill the requirements to get to the Q course. You got selected, but you still have a little bit more to go. Completing BLC if you have not. So you have to complete BLC, and then going to airborne school if you have not. Get in the wings, because you do jump in the Q course. You do jump. We do jump in PSYOP. It's part of the requirements in SOF. And then from there, then you can start the Q course. After you complete all those requirements, BLC, airborne, and anything else, you'll get PCS orders. You PCS to Fort Bragg, and Fort Bragg is home. It's just like a regular PCS. You'll be in school, but just like a regular PCS. This will now be your duty station, so you can take some PCS leave on the front end, so you can move your family here. A lot of people have questions about, can I bring my family here, stuff like that. And yes, it's just like a regular PCS. So take some leave, come to Fort Bragg. You can find a home, live on post however you want, however you see fit, and then then the Q course starts from there.
Right.
Yeah.
So what is that? In all of that, what is the SORB's job, or what does that relationship look like with that recruiter for somebody that comes back that's been selected?
So for us, the road kind of ends with you submitting your packet with us. I take that back. The road kind of ends with us from when we ship you off to selection. So if you're at Fort Bragg, it's a little bit more of a intimate relationship. We're a little closer. Selection is here. We're able to communicate with you more. We take you to selection. We make sure you're at Bank Hall. We make sure you're good to go, and we see you off the bus all the way to, or not all the way to, but once you get on the bus to go to McCall, then that's the last time you see us. We're there with you pretty much the whole process. When you come back, you're at Fort Bragg, so you can still come back and see us. A lot of the guys that are here, we do a prep course. So a lot of those guys that are here will run the prep course after they get selected for the next group of guys. But the road kind of really ends for most SORB / selectees at submitting your packet or seeing you off to selection. We don't really we don't have any. One, we can't help you past that, and then two, there's no need. That SWIC and USASOC and all that other stuff kind of take it from there. And so there's not much more past selection that we really deal with.
So with that said, if a person has questions or concerns or needs help with something, can they still reach out to that PSYOP recruiter or that
absolutely.
SORB station?
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, we are still SOF. I'm still a SOP guy, and I know, not to say I know people, but we know the proper resources and the proper people to contact for you to be able to get in the right direction. That being said, don't be afraid to reach out. If you do need help, we can still help you. But as far as kind of responsibilities, there are really none. But of course, we will help you where you need help at. Yeah.
Right. Now, I think of it. It's a big family.
Yeah.
And once you've been selected, you're coming into something new, unknown, and so having that resource, even if it's simple questions, and just correct me if I'm wrong, of I've never PCS'd. You've got that E3 or E4 that's still their first duty station, and now it's a daunting task to PCS if you've never done it. Trying to change duty stations, and then if you've got a family, that's a whole other ball of wax. Sometimes it's good to have that person at the station that you can go and say, hey, well, what can I do? How can I prepare? Am I going the right direction? Because you're now making that jump over to the special operations family. And I think that's important for them to realize that we are there to still help them. It is a small, tight-knit community. We all, one of the things I used to tell my students when I was an instructor, you're going to see all of us again in some shape or fashion at some point.
Yep.
If you stay in the career field for a career. And it happens all the time. I run into my students, whether they were officers or NCOs. And so that's really that first bond that's built with that sword recruiter. So I think it's important for the person coming into the MLS to know that it's not just a recruiter-recruitee relationship.
It's. I mean, you nailed it as far as you're gonna see these people again, whether it's a year from now or 3 years from now or maybe you're gonna be on the same team. The NCOAC of the Q course was the NCOAC of the Q course when I was going through the Q course ended up being my first sergeant as soon as I got out of the Q course. And now, talking to you earlier, now he's a sergeant major of the SWIC, or the group. And so, I mean, you were my instructor for Jump Master. Mm-hmm. I mean, before Jump Master, I didn't even know who you were, and now we're working together.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's a very small regiment, and then it's a small community as far as soft goes, and even smaller regiment. Right. You're going to see people. Master Sergeant Griffin was my cadre at selection, and I was just working with him on the virtual open house. And so you're going to work with these people again. Yep. And so it's not only in the best interest of the soldier to help them get the help they need when they're going through the process, but you as well. You don't want to, you don't want to be, I don't want to swear on your podcast, but you don't want to be, you don't want to demean or you don't want to push aside a younger soldier, a newer soldier, because you might end up having to work with him. He might be one of your soldiers, and you don't want him having that sort of attitude towards you when he's one of your guys. Right. So it's karma, right?
I mean, we're all human. We're all soldiers. Yeah. But it's that family, and you don't ever want to. It's the golden rule. Yeah. Treat people as you want to be treated. Yeah. But at the end of the day, you're bringing them into that family, that create that bond, and say shows from the onset, the day you walk through the door and said you wanted to be PSYOP. Mm-hmm. You're here now. You're one of us. Let me help you if you need help. Yeah.
And I mean, it also goes back to some of the reasons why people even go south in the first place is like they're treated like children, or some units or some teams or whatever. They're treated in a certain way, and they're trying to better themselves. They're trying to better their career, and they're trying to be part of this community where we're all, you're a step above that now. You're part of this. You did the work. You got selected. Mm-hmm. There's something about you that the people saw that there's more to you. You don't deserve that kind of treatment. You don't deserve that kind of treatment, period. But we certainly don't treat our soldiers and our community in the same way. Like they say, play by the big boy rules, right? And so, I mean, that's part of it too. So.
Okay. Yeah. So I think we've talked through a few of the resources, and I just want to make sure before we cut this that we get the information out there so that people know where to go. So if I'm a person out there that wants to look for information on the PSYOP process, how to get to selection, whether the qualifications, where should they go?
I mean, now, within the last 6 months, I would say, especially with you guys coming on board as far as working with us and then kind of doing similar things but in your own way, now more than ever, there are ample resources for information and, tips and tricks. But when I was going, just go back a little bit, when I was going through selection, all I had was a SWORD recruiter, mm-hmm. and like I mentioned, that PSYOP SWORD recruiter ended up having to leave for a little while, and then that was all the information I had, and maybe Go Army Soft, but that was it. Yep. Now, you have all the Go Army Soft social media. You have your social media, the 8th group, the 4th group social media. Right. You guys have, I mean, if you've come across this podcast, you probably come across some sort of form of your social media. Which is they probably come across our form of social media. But there is a lot of different channels and resources now. But I guess to name them off, you have Go Army Soft. If you go Army Soft, any of the major platforms. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, Go Army Soft is on it. Okay. Like I mentioned at the very beginning, I help run those pages. So if you direct message those pages, you're going to be directly contacting me. That's one of the things that I wanted to do when taking being part of the social media stuff is giving it, kind of a human factor to it. It's not automated. You're not going to be, hey, I'm interested in soft, and there's going to be some auto response about, okay, well, here's the packet information. It's an actual communication, and I'll be the one communicating with you. But any of those major social media accounts, we just started a Slack community. So Slack is like a communication platform. A lot of businesses use it for teams and stuff like that. If one specific team can talk to another team, or you can talk internally within one another, it's just a form of communication. It's become very popular with the social distancing and like the telework type thing.
Okay.
With that being said, we turned it into a Slack community where people who are not only interested in SOF, or not only interested in getting answers from GoArmySoft, but can also speak to other people that are interested in special operations in general. Like we mentioned, it's a you're going to be becoming part of a family, and so that's what we're trying to do with our community. Is you can ask questions on there, and yes, I will answer those questions. But there's other people on there now too, where maybe this guy just went to selection, and he has his not even at the answer, but his insight on what he did, or his perspective on it. And so it's just a form of communication where people can just kind of bounce ideas back and forth, talk, hey, I'm about to PCS from Fort Carson. What do I need to do? And then this other guy, I just PCS from Fort Carson. This is where I went. This is what I did type thing. And so that's what we're truly, it's really new. We just started it last week, but we're hoping, more people get on it so we can really help each other out. And then GoArmySoft, obviously, GoArmySoft.com is a resource. And then I really, really want to highlight, not just because I'm on this show, but because how great of a job you and your team have done of doing social media. All of your social media accounts, so 8th Group social media accounts, they have really, I think, raised the bar as far as social media goes as far as the other units. So not just SOP units, but the CA units kind of stepping up their game now because of what you guys are doing, and then the SF groups obviously have their social media accounts. But follow the 8th Group. If you're specifically interested in the PSYOP, I think one of your guys' pages are very good, because GoArmySoft is good for soft. It's not always SOF specific. So if you're looking at SOF specific stuff, I think your guys' accounts are very good to look out for information as well. Other than that, I think that's it. And then obviously going into your office. Nothing beats going into the office and talking to an actual PSYOP guy.
Yeah. If you have the opportunity, I mean, for me, I wish I would have. I was miles away. I was in Texas when I came into PSYOP, and everything was phone call and email. I never even met my recruiter. And so, even your situation was a little bit different.
You're like 50 though. So you probably had like the what is it? The
rotary phone. I had to call the operator. Yeah. So it shows you how it's evolved over the years. And I will absolutely encourage, appreciate the kudos with the social media stuff. We've got a bunch of great guys that work on that, and they have great ideas. They keep pushing forward. But at the end of the day, if you want to come talk to one of us, come to one of our companies, our battalions, groups, 4th or 8th Group. It doesn't matter. People will talk to you. They'll tell you their personal stories. It's the same with our social media. It's personal. You're going to get a person. It may not be immediate, but you will get a person that can speak to you about PSYOP. So, if you're afraid to talk to a recruiter at first, because I know how that is, it's like, I've talked to the recruiter, I'm committed. No, you're not.
Yeah.
And if you're afraid to make that first step, make your first step coming to us.
Yeah.
Because we can bring you around. We'll show you where we work.
Yep.
We'll show you, if you're on Fort Bragg, and even still, we have PSYOPers everywhere. Reach out and see who's out at the different locations, and we can probably get you face-to-face with a PSYOPer to answer any of your questions or concerns. So don't be afraid to reach out and talk to us.
I think that's really important that you said that if you come in and talk to a recruiter, go into the SORB office, you're committed. That's not the case whatsoever. It's probably something that honestly really never even thought about. That's probably a big reason why people don't want to go into an office or don't want to approach a recruiter is they think that, okay, so step in here, I'm going to have to sign something. That's not the case. So we don't make you sign anything. We actually don't even take the volunteer statement until you have all the other documents ready. So there's no pressure there. But I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who have come in and then never seen again. But I gave them the information about what PSYOP is, and maybe they're going to tell somebody else.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're going to make that decision 6 months from now when they go to Fort Carson, and now they have the information they need. So just get the information you need, and just talk to somebody, and you know, it's going to help down the road.
No, absolutely.
Oh, I would hope so anyway.
Yeah. So before we go, you got anything else to add? Anything for anybody out there that's thinking about, coming into the RSOF family, coming into PSYOP?
I mean, the only thing I have to say is, if you're thinking about it, just do it. You can sit there and think about it, and you can prep for who knows how long, but it's never going to happen unless you just do it. You don't know until you know. If you don't get selected, it's not the end of the road. You can always go back. But you don't know until you try. And I say, if you're thinking about it, just go for it. There's no other way to find out. I've talked to people on social media who have gotten out of the Army, who are now trying to get back into PSYOP, or trying to get into the Army and go PSYOP, and they said that they wish they would have done it when they were in. And that because it's a little bit harder for them trying to get back into the Army, one, and then trying to go PSYOP. So just go for it. That's all I got to say.